Alright, so this is a video to show how to use the drone. So the first part that we're gonna go over is how to, it's gonna be explaining how the setup is. So this one is gonna be setup and pairing, so connecting to the drone so that they're connected. So the very first thing you gotta do, which we're gonna look at, is the smart. You gotta include the library for it. So the drone is gonna come with a new library. So you gotta make sure that that library is included. So one way you can check is if you go to File and you go to Examples or Sketchbook. If you go to Sketchbook, you can see what libraries we have. So right here we have Smart Drone Control, which is the library that we're gonna be using heavily for this project or for drones. So that's that. So it's kind of like Rocket Smart. It has its own library. Um, on the top, we define three variables. These variables are going to be used for later on. They're going to be used for trim. Trim. It's basically just kind of like a lock. It's just to check that we don't over trim too easily by leaving the joystick on one side. I'll show how that works later on. So that's just three variables that are going to represent the different possibilities of movement: pitch, yaw, and roll. Our setup is pretty simple because a lot of things are abstracted or hidden away in Smart Inventor or Smart Drone Control. You just have to call the function. It's kind of like using motors on the Rocket Smart. Um, so setup is not going to be that long or arduous. We're going to have a serial begin. For the drone to work, we do have to have serial communication because it's how we connect and send signals through the Zigbee. So the Zigbee is connected to the serial port, and then that's how we're gonna send signals and then send them. Smart drone control that begin basically just does the initial setup for the drone, so it says where it's connected and all that good stuff. So essentially, you just call it and it works. We put a delay of 1,000, so 1 second, just to make sure that everything has time to actually set up and we don't uh, continue and start giving commands before that happens. So that's pretty simple. So that's set up. Not so bad so far. The next thing we're going to look at is Boyd loop. So Boyd loop, as you can see, is pretty full of stuff. But if you break it into pieces, it becomes less intimidating. So that's what we're gonna do. For trim, we're not gonna go all the way to the controllers. So this should be simple enough. The first area that you'll see is setup. So you're setting up variables that you're gonna be constantly using. And what these variables are gonna be used is for the controllers and for decision making. Is your robot being paired? Is your robot on? Is your robot off? Is it ready to fly? Is it not ready to fly? Can you trim it? Can you not? So these are the dip switches. So the red little box on top of the reset button, 1, 2, and 3. Um, we're gonna be using those to easily be able to tell that we're in one mode because pairing can be pretty fickle when it's pressing buttons. So this is gonna make sure that once we flip them up, we're ready to go. So 8 is 1, 9 is dip switch 2, and 3. It's self-explanatory. Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Really, we're just gonna use it for specifically pairing. For the next one, we have these three bottom sensors. We use 3 so that we can use the rest of the LEDs as output so that we can have some sort of display. So when it starts flashing, we can tell that, oh, it's because it's showing that it's on or off or etc. So we're only going to use 3. So 11, 14, and 18, and we're going to use them to select our modes in a sense. And then we're going to have 4 analog pins. And these are going to be for your throttle, yaw, pitch, and roll. So they're basically going to be your joystick controllers. So they're going to do analog read from them so that they translate that number into something that the drone can work with. Uh, so yeah, so that's just simple setup, as you can see. Pairing is gonna be where now we get into actually talking to the drone. So the drone has a Zigbee, and every time you turn it on, you gotta do some sort of pairing between the two devices so that you can tell. You know when the drone and your controller is paired when the drone starts flashing uh, two colors. So when it's not paired, it goes red, full blue, full red, and alternate. Once it's paired, it'll go into this green, white mixture of colors that is constant. Um, However, during pairing, during this mode, it doesn't necessarily gonna show you that. So what you do is you flip the DIP switches to this state where DIP switch 1 and 3 are down and DIP switch 2 is up on the board. Um, so down, I mean when it's basically when they're down is when they're ready. If your Smart Inventor board is down, usually that's when you can select all the programs. If you flip the DIP switch 2 so that it's uneven with 1 and 3, it's going to make it so that you can pair your two robots. Again, while pairing, it's not necessarily going to show you the colors that you want, the blue, white, and green, but it's just be aware that it is pairing. Just leave it for a while and then flip the two back down. So here we're gonna set the state equal to ready. So this is basically just saying that the drone is ready to be receiving information and everything. And then we're gonna call smart drone control pairing. Each function has each job or state mode, whatever you want to call it, has a function like this one, which basically just calls it and it does this stuff. But just so that we can tell that it's actually doing it, we're gonna add this as well. And this is just flashing lights and like changing the lights so that you can tell that it's in that mode. Digital write 13 delay, digital write 13 delay, 12 and 17, and it's gonna constantly do that until you flip them back to the original state. All these states, by the way, are connected to each other. So if you're in pairing, you cannot do stop and reset yaw. FYI. So that was pairing. For stop, again, it's kind of hidden, but it also has its own function. So this is a function call that it's gonna stop the drone from receiving and sending. But we also have this one called blink that just makes uh, the lights well, the lights turn on for a specific duration. Um, it's just again a display, and then it turns off the lights. Uh, this function right here is just to make sure that if you leave your finger there, you're not constantly running through the whole program. Instead, you're stuck in this point until you release the finger. This is just to make sure that you don't accidentally cause weird things to happen to your robot because you're holding your finger in place for too long. Again, state equals ready because ready doesn't mean that it's going to fly. It just means that the communication is there. Reset yaw. So every time you are ready to fly, you're gonna be resetting the yaw. So your robot's ready to fly. Again, we do a blink, but it's just a display thing. And then we're gonna turn on the LEDs. The LEDs are gonna be on this time as opposed to stop. And this, if the LEDs are on, you're in fly mode. If they're off, you're not. You're stop mode. Reset yaw. Again, it's its own function. And again, we're holding to make sure that you lift your finger after you select it. And now this is where we actually change the state to fly. So fly just means that it's going to fly. Trim reset. Um, this is what you do in order to, if you trim your robot and you wanna reset it to its default state, you use this. So I will warn that if you're in a really sunny room, you can accidentally reset the trim and you have to redo it again. So watch out for that. Maybe in the future you might want to use something that doesn't use the bottom sensors, maybe like a switch or something, a button. Again, blink and turn on the LEDs. Then we're gonna do just one LED on, and then we're gonna call the function that corresponds to it. And then since in order to jump into this one, you're holding both the LED or pin 11 and pin 18. You're gonna check for those two, so it works the same as before. And the last thing that we're gonna talk about today is, or in this video, is going to be here. So this is gonna be the one that sets up the flying and the trimming. So these two statements are independent of the other ones, the 4 other states: pairing, stop, reset, yaw, trim, reset. So regardless of what these ones before are doing, you can set it to fly or trim no matter what. So you watch out for that. So if you're holding on to BT8, it might get weird. So if your state is equal to fly and you are holding on to BT8, you're gonna change it to trim. If your state was not that, if you're not holding onto the button and you were on trim, you're gonna change to fly. So in simple English, if you're holding onto BT8, which is the rightmost sensor, bottom sensor, you're gonna cause your robot to go into trim mode, and that's when you adjust so that it moves. If you release your finger from there, you're gonna be in flight mode. So when you're messing with your robot, keep your fingers off of BT8 unless you're trying to trim. So that's it for the setup and pairing. So if you have this code so far, you should be able to not control but connect to the robot and see it flashing and doing all that. The next video I'll go over the joystick and probably trim, since it looks joystick, as you'll see it's pretty short. Right.